Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I want to tell you what I've been reading, making, doing, learning and generally what I've been up to recently. Basically, this is just your typical currently reading video, which we all know and love on BookTube, but with some added stuff. Let's start with the books though. I currently have two books on the go. One of them, which I'm reading as a paperback, is Robin Hood by Henry Gilbert. This is a Robin Hood, I don't know if you can call it retelling, but it is a version of the Robin Hood myth as told by Henry Gilbert in 1912. Now there are two kind of classic versions of Robin Hood from the turn of the 20th century. The other one by Howard Pyle was, I believe, published a little bit earlier in the late 19th century, and this one came in 1912. I have not read the Howard Pyle version, but I vividly remember having that on the family bookshelf growing up, and I know my brother was a huge fan of that. Obviously he read it in a German translation, but I somehow never actually picked that book up, so I can't compare the two. This is the one that I'm reading and so far I'm enjoying it. I'm still at the beginning of it in the chapter titled How Robin Became an Outlaw. Spoiler alert, if you're not familiar with Robin Hood, he becomes an outlaw and I would say is probably Britain's most beloved socialist. So yeah, I'm quite excited to discover, you know, the well-known stories around Robin Hood and his merry band of thieves and the Lady Marianne and the Sheriff of Nottingham and, you know, all of these kind of characters that we all know from various Disney adaptations and other stories, and see how that popular and well-loved story is presented in this edition from 100 years ago. So far I am enjoying the story. The language is kind of archaic, but not 1912 archaic, more like 1912 pretending to be 1150 archaic. So the author is clearly trying for a kind of medieval type of language. You know, for someone who is not at all familiar with with language at the time, obviously whenever Robin Hood is said, they wouldn't even have spoken modern English, they would have spoken Middle English. For someone who's not at all familiar with the history of the English language, this kind of fake archaic English gives me a sense of immersion that I quite enjoy and appreciate. It's not about the authenticity of this as a historical novel, which it clearly isn't. It's more about that sense of medieval adventure that you get from reading this kind of story in this kind of setting. The second book that I'm currently reading, I'm actually listening to on audiobook, and that is the Mistress of the Art of Death series by Ariana Franklin. Now, that book, specifically the first one, which is called Mistress of the Art of Death, has been recommended to me, I want to say more than any other book. It certainly has been recommended to me a lot in comments on my YouTube videos or on social media. People really seem to think that I will enjoy this series. As I'm now 3 books into that series, I can confirm that I did enjoy the series, or am enjoying it so far. The first book in particular I found really engaging. For those of you who are not familiar with this novel, it's a historical crime mystery novel in which the role of the detective is played by essentially a medieval version of a forensic pathologist. So the main character, the titular Mistress of the Art of Death, is a young Italian, well, Sicilian to be precise, Sicilian doctor who is called by the courts of England to travel from Sicily, although not the modern island of Sicily, but the southern half of Italy, which back then was the Kingdom of Sicily. So she's forced to travel from the south of Italy to England to solve a series of children's murders in medieval Cambridge. This is set in the 1170s. As I've just mentioned, the detective is a female doctor, which when I first read that bit, my belief had to be suspended quite a lot, but then I actually did some research, aka I googled Salerno on Wikipedia, and it turns out that yes, female doctors were actually educated at the medical school of Salerno. So I guess in that regard, that setup is more accurate and more authentic than you might first think. But like with Robin Hood, authenticity is not really what makes this book interesting. It's not really about how plausible it is that the King of England would send for an Italian doctor who just so happens to have invented the whole idea of studying bodies and doing examinations and post-mortems as a forensic tool to find a killer. That seems very 21st century to me, but it doesn't really matter because this is a fun story of adventure and mystery and your typical early 2000s strong female character trope solving mystery. I don't care whether it's cliched and whether it's inauthentic and whether it makes no sense. It's a really fun novel. I enjoyed it immensely and I immediately bought the other 3 parts of the series on audiobook. So now I am right at the end of the 3rd of the 4 books, and it's great. It's not as fantastic as the first one. I definitely think that both the 2nd and the 3rd book lack a little bit of that spark of imagination that the first one had, but I'm still enjoying the series and I am planning to finish it. So if you are interested in a medieval mystery detective series that doesn't take itself too seriously, that has a good amount of humour about it, and a good amount of gore, I should mention that. There is violence and death and bodies and some really horrible things happening to children, specifically in the first book. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, then definitely give that a go. Although, in this case, I wouldn't recommend the audiobook. The audiobooks, which I already bought, so I'm gonna listen to them, they are read by Diana Bishop, and she's not my favourite, okay? So she doesn't do a bad job, so I'm definitely going to listen to them rather than return the audiobooks and buy a paper copy, but she's not giving it the best that I think the book deserves. So these were the 2 books that I'm currently reading, and let me just show you what else I've been up to. I just mentioned that I have been listening to the Mistress of the Art of Death series as audiobooks, and that is mainly because I've been doing a lot of things while listening to the audiobooks. One thing that I've been teaching myself while listening to audiobooks is actually juggling. Yes, you know, like at the circus. Yeah, that was a bit of a weird chain of thoughts that got me thinking that I really should learn to juggle. I think what happened was that I was fixing my hair with some hairpins or something, and then one of them dropped and I caught it with my shoulder, as you do, you know, so I just went whoo, and I caught the hairpin and it dropped on my shoulder. And then I had this epiphany. I thought, Claudia, you are really good at catching things, really good at catching. You should definitely learn to juggle. And so I did. At first I didn't want to spend money on actually buying juggling balls, so I crocheted some out of some random yarn that I had lying around, and they worked pretty well. I filled them with rice. So I wrapped the rice in some cling film and then stuffed that into the crocheted spheres to make juggling balls, and they worked pretty well for a while, but then, you know, something inside of them must have ruptured and they started raining rice all over my place. So after they started leaking, I thought, you know, I should probably just get over it and buy myself a set of proper juggling balls. So I've got these ones, I bought them online, and yeah, I'm still very much learning. I'm very much at the beginning of my circus performer journey, but it's really fun, and it's something that I do when I take breaks from my PhD. So after I've been sitting at my desk for a while, and you know, you get a stiff neck and your shoulders kind of start drooping and everything feels really uncomfortable, I just get up and throw some of the balls around, and that gets me relaxed, gets my posture up and better, and it also warms me up a bit when it's cold, because it has been surprisingly cold considering it is technically June. Yeah, so if you want to learn something that's kind of fun and kind of irrelevant, you know, that's the beauty of something like juggling. Like, who cares if you drop your balls or not? You're not performing in front of anyone. It's just a fun, almost meditative thing to do that gets you up, gets you standing instead of sitting down, and is weirdly calming. Yeah. Maybe I'll be brave and insert a little clip of my juggling skills so far at the end of the video. We'll see. You'll have to see. You'll have to watch and see. The other thing that I've been doing while listening to audiobooks is, of course, crochet and knitting. I've shown this in a previous video. This is the cardigan that I'm still making. This is quite a big project, you know, it takes a long time to make a cardigan, but I really enjoyed this. This is the first time using that I used what's called a mosaic crochet technique. You can tell this was made by a beginner. You know, if my mum made this, all of these stitches would be perfectly even and it would just look so sharp. Mine isn't quite there yet, but I'm still enjoying the process. Crochet for me is quite a relaxing activity, and I usually do this while listening to an audiobook or watching television in the evenings. And I have been knitting, of course. Now, knitting is something I started doing last year. I started learning last year, and yeah, loving it so far. I just finished. No, I'm not finished yet. I'm finishing this. Well, you can't tell. It's going to be a sort of a tank top. This is the one strap that needs to be attached at the back. I'm still finishing the other one, and it's just kind of a cute little summer top that I made from some leftover yarn that I had as well. I will link both the crochet and the knitting pattern in the description box if you're interested in those. The knitting one, the top, is actually a free pattern, so you can just download that without having to pay for it, which is lovely. Also, this is the pattern lists this as a crop top, but if you are 5 foot nothing like I am, then anything that's listed as a crop top suddenly becomes full length. So if you are a normal height person, then this will be cropped on you, but it's really easy to adapt as well, and just to make it a bit longer. And finally, and it's kind of a shame that I don't have any pictures to show you, I really should have thought of that before. I have been making a lot of cakes. I am a fairly confident baker. I think I'm quite good at baking, and I've really been enjoying making cakes and cupcakes. I made some really nice blueberry and lemon muffins the other day, which were very good, but they're all gone now. And just a few days ago I made a apricot upside down cake, so using canned apricots, which honestly most of the fruit that I eat these days is canned or frozen because we're not going to the shops a lot. And that was a nice way of using a can of apricots. So there you go. That's what I've been up to lately. The next few videos are probably going to be in preparation of Jane Austen July. I am really quite excited about that. I have been looking forward to a summer of Jane Austen since the last summer of Jane Austen. I really genuinely love this readathon, and I'm so looking forward to taking part again. So you can expect lots of Jane Austen related videos coming up on this channel. But that's it for today. Let me know what you've been up to and what you've been reading, and thank you for watching. Bye!